The necromancer stood before the crumbling gates of his former home, the wind whipping his black cloak around him like a living thing. His face was hidden behind the cowl, but those who stood with him craned their necks to see his features, etched and pale as bone. For many years he had walked among them incognito, hiding his identity and biding his time. He'd clawed his way out of the grave and risen as an undead monarch, waging war across the countryside and turning the hearts and minds of men against the royal family that had banished him. And now he was ready to reclaim what was once his by right. His lieutenant, a hulking ogre with moss growing between his tusks, grunted and slammed his spear into the ground. "What are we waiting for? Kill them all!" The necromancer shook his head. It would be a massacre if they attacked now, but soon the people would turn against the king, begging for the return of the boy they had loved. When that day came, he would have the full support of the populace and could take the city without bloodshed. Then he would sit on the throne once more, ruling not as the weak child once destined to, but as the most powerful necromancer the world had ever seen. He raised a skeletal finger, silencing his lieutenant's protests. His dark eyes gleamed with cold intelligence. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of purple and orange, a fitting end to one age and the beginning of another. He glanced down at the ornate box held by one of his mages, its surface carved with arcane sigils. Inside it pulsed with dark energy, the power of death and decay. The necromancer smiled beneath his cowl. Yes, this would be a night to remember. A few hours later, the residents of Alder's Gate were enjoying their evening, the warm glow of hearth fires spilling out onto the cobblestones. Children chased each other through the streets, their laughter echoing off the buildings. The baker emerged from his shop carrying a loaf of bread to a young woman. She smiled at him, her fingers brushing his arm. The old knight chuckled at some joke told by the tavern keeper. A bard sang of daring adventures while his lute-player companion kept time with the stories. The night was alive with merriment and hope for the future. The townspeople had long forgotten about the strange figure who had come through town that afternoon, cloaked and silent, with eyes like bottomless pits of darkness. They hadn't paid heed to the unnatural chill that had settled over the city, or the feeling of dread that had crawled up their spines. They hadn't heard the necromancer whisper to his followers, "Tonight we feast." The party in the square was broken up by a sudden crash. A gaping hole had opened up in the road, and from it clawed a hand covered in moss and dirt. Then more hands, then a whole body dragging itself closer and closer until it crashed to its knees in front of the stunned townspeople. The dead man's chest heaved, and a gurgling cough tore from his throat as he clawed at the wound in his neck. From the shadows, the necromancer watched with amusement. He let the townspeople panic and flee to their homes, their screams echoing in the night. After all, he had to make sure everyone knew how dire the situation was. When the streets were clear, he strode out from the shadows and knelt beside the zombie. With a touch, he channeled a bit of his power into the corpse, stabilizing it and strengthening it. He stood up, addressing his followers. "Go forth, my children, and bring me back every man, woman, and child who has died within these city walls. Tonight, we feast." As his followers vanished into the crowd, the necromancer straightened his robes and made his way toward the nearest building. It wasn't much of a challenge to break in. All he had to do was concentrate on the lock, and it crumbled to dust. Sneaking through the halls, he located the bedroom and pushed the door open. He found a sleeping girl inside, her hair fanned out on the pillow beside her. Her breathing was slow and shallow, just on the edge of life. The necromancer approached the bed, crouching down beside it. "Wake up, little one," he whispered. The girl stirred, her eyes fluttering open. She looked at the stranger kneeling beside her, fear dawning on her face. "Who are you?" she whispered. He leaned close, his breath cold as ice. "I am the one who will bring you back to life," he hissed, reaching out to stroke her hair. She flinched away, scrambling back from him. "No, stay away from me," she whispered, scrambling off the bed. He let her go, watching as she fled from the room. She ran as fast as she could, the necromancer close behind her. He could easily catch her, but he wanted to play with her a little first. He burst through the doors to find her standing on the top of the stairs, her heart pounding in her chest. "It's no use," she gasped, tears streaming down her face. "There's nowhere left to hide." "You don't understand," he said softly, stepping toward her. "I want to help you." She shook her head, backing away. "You're not real," she whispered. "Oh, but I am," he said, reaching out to touch her again. She screamed and jumped over the balcony, falling to the ground below. He watched her fall, a smile spreading beneath his cowl. This game was almost as fun as he had thought it would be. He landed beside her, kneeling beside her once more. As she lay there looking up at him, he could see the fear, the confusion, the pain in her eyes. He reached out and brushed a strand of hair from her face. She flinched, but didn't move away. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Because I want to show you what it's like to be truly powerful," he said, his voice echoing in her mind. "To be able to raise an army of the dead and control them with your mind. Imagine the possibilities." Her eyes widened as she stared up at him. She could feel the power emanating from him, the raw, untamed magic that hummed just beneath his skin. She had never felt anything like it before. "You could rule the world," he continued, leaning closer, his breath hot on her neck. "And I can teach you how." She looked at him, really looked at him for the first time, and saw the darkness that lurked beneath his skin, the hunger that burned in his eyes. She saw the monster that he was, the monster that he wanted her to become, and in that moment she understood. She had stumbled upon something ancient, something evil, something that threatened to consume her whole. She had found a power that was not meant for her, a power that would corrupt and destroy. She struggled to pull away, but his grip was like iron. He pressed closer, his lips brushing against her ear. "Let go of your humanity," he whispered, his voice a silken thread that pulled at her soul. "Embrace the darkness and become what you were always meant to be." She screamed, the sound echoing through the empty streets, but he didn't care. He held her tighter, his power surging through her veins, twisting and turning, tearing at her very essence. She could feel herself changing, becoming something more, something less. As the sun rose, bathing the city in a new light, the necromancer stood before the king's palace, his followers at his side. In his hand, he held the staff of command, its tip glowing with dark energy. At his feet lay the bodies of those who had tried to stop him, their faces frozen in eternal screams. He raised his staff, and the dead rose, their eyes burning with unholy fire. The king stood on the balcony above, his face ashen, his eyes wide with terror. Beside him the queen clutched her son close, her face streaked with tears and dirt. "You're too late," the necromancer called up to them, his voice echoing in the square. "Your time is done. Now Alder's Gate belongs to me." He turned, addressing his followers, their numbers bolstered by the fresh horde of zombies. "Today we take the city," he commanded, his voice ringing with power. "Today we dine in the halls of the king." With a roar, the undead horde surged forward, crashing into the gates. The necromancer watched with amusement, knowing that nothing could stop him now. He had waited so long for this moment, and soon he would be king once more.